My goal this episode is to transform this rock island into a massive prehistoric monument. I've already built a village on a nearby tropical island. This monument will be the mysterious item that attracted the people who now worship the ancient ruins and celebrate with yearly festivals. The builders were a mysterious group with their own lore, celebrating a great hero whose story we will explore today. Beginning any project starts with setting up a little bit of a base. That's the first thing that I do. I take a boat over, I put down a bed, and definitely some chests so I can put all the supplies that I have in over here. Filled my pockets, extra food, extra torches, everything you might need to get a project started. My next step is to take a couple stacks of torches and just spam the ground like crazy. I just want to make sure that I'm lighting up this island so that I don't have to worry about mobs spawning while I'm over here working. These torches are not staying. This is not a permanent solution for lighting up the island. And at this point, I'm still considering different pallets, different things that I'm going to use for lighting it up. But I don't want to have to worry about a creeper sneaking up on me while I'm flattening the ground. If you notice how uneven the ground is, then it won't surprise you that that, in fact, is my first step of actually building, is to tear down a little bit of what's there, at least one full layer of stone that I want to come down before I start building back up again. After I shaved the top few layers of stone off, I went through and replaced anything that was not stone with stone. And I mean anything. So that is if it was grass, sand, gravel, ores, anything in the top layer of the stone here that wasn't stone, I went through and changed it out. My tools were really wearing down after taking so much stone off of the island, and I've still been using trading with the villagers for most of my experience points. And this is how I'm harvesting the pumpkins now, and these tiny little things. I do have the poison spiders in that room where I can take them out to get a little bit of XP, but I came all the way down not for the spiders, but because I needed to put together a farm, someplace that I wouldn't be able to see it up top, and I could start putting lots of farm space together. I need more crops, more of the pumpkins and the melons and even the wheat and potatoes. I need more of that kind of stuff if I'm going to trade with the villagers at a high enough rate that I can get all of my tools healed up on a regular basis. I also still needed lots of emeralds because a few of the villagers have things that I want to buy from them, things that I need to use to purchase with those emeralds. So a little bit of a farm down here that's just big and easy to harvest from was a necessary thing to do. It's certainly not the prettiest crop farm ever, but it's going to work just fine for the things that I need. I started working on the palette for the cliffside with a little bit of blackstone, deep slate, gravel, tuff, lots of tuff, a little bit of ore, just regular coal ore that hadn't been mined, and regular stone, of course. I don't want the island to be spawnable, so I also used glowstone with a little bit of the new pale moss over the top of it, which will allow for the light to keep it spawn-proof in the area without actually being seen. The last step was to run a bunch of different slabs just to kind of give a little bit of difference between the heights of the stone and, of course, a little bit more of that pale moss carpet. I loved how the cliff was coming together, but I did not have enough of most of these supplies yet. To get what I need, I had to go into the Nether. Blackstone, of course, in the Nether. I had a little bit from some trading with the piglins I'd done before, and I've been to the Nether, but I have to tell you what, my spawn, while beautiful, seems to be like a big Nether island floating over the top of an even bigger, gigantic lava ocean. I started digging in the only direction I had available to me, and while I was doing that, I was looking for gold. I would use gold to trade with the piglins to get more black stone and gravel. The gold would also provide for items I could trade with the piglins to trade back to the villagers to get emeralds for other things that the villagers would have available to me. I used my Silk Touch pickaxe to get as much of the glowstone as I could anywhere that I found it along my path, and I was lucky to find a few good chunks that were right at normal level, but most of the glowstone is hanging off of the nether ceiling, and it really takes a lot of careful maneuvering to get up and collect it all. I continued exploring out into the nether as best as I could. I was also looking for a way down to the lava so I could get a strider and move about on the lava, and I really still needed blackstone that I hadn't found any of yet. I'd forgotten I could find so many bone blocks in the nether, so that was a really good thing that I added to my list. Eventually, I found the striders. I made a friend and I gave him a saddle, and then we started off into the lava. This is always one of the coolest but also scariest things, and I stopped from time to time to get more bones whenever I found them because I realized with more bones, I need that for bone meal to make more moss, and I'm using so much of that pale moss in the cliffside, and with the carpets, bones were definitely going to be very valuable. I continued on the strider, mostly looking out for blackstone and a fortress, but I never did find a fortress. I did, however, find a bastion, a big, huge, scary, crazy looking bastion. These things always kill me, and I was such a long way from home, but there was a big pile of gold blocks literally at the top of it, and I know that there's this beautiful gold here in the blackstone that you can get. The problem is, it makes the pigs mad, and a brute came running up that I didn't know was there. I was so scared, my entire hand and mouth shook, and then I dropped my pickaxe because I hit the button accidentally, but I managed to run the running. It was some serious running, and was able to stack myself up and use the boat to take the brute out. I got very lucky on this one. I continued along being even more cautious than I was before, if that was even possible, and made sure that I had all of the paths blocked off before getting any of the gilded blackstone because I didn't want another surprise like I had before. I knew that these type of bastions didn't have a lot of chests in them with treasures or goodies. It's just a matter of getting safely to the top so you can get the gold. And let's just say that I got more lucky than I was talented, because I always managed to die in these things. I took out the hoglins up at the top. I stacked blocks up to take out as many of the piglins as I could see, brutes if I could see them from a distance, and managed to make it to the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. This was such a good source of gold. Again, my goal at this point is to trade the gold in to a piglin back at the base so that I can get all the resources from them, including the ones I really need for the build that I have in mind. I stopped exploring the bastion pretty quickly because I wanted to get out while I was ahead, and I went down to the base where my strider was and just started mining out a bunch of the blackstone in a safely enclosed space where I knew that none of the hoglins or piglins or brutes could come and get me, and it was productive. I was able to get a bunch before getting back onto my strider. I decided to name my beautiful strider Stanley. It seemed like a good fit. I didn't have a name tag on me at the time, but nonetheless, my helpful, beautiful, cute little strider is named Stanley, and he carried me to every destination in the game, including the one with the blackstone eventually, but I already had quite a bit that I got from the bastion of all places. I was going home kind of a different way, and I had a long way to go, and I found this really cool portal here in the Nether. There was nothing interesting really in its chest, which is a disappointment, although I did pick up a block of gold from its base, but I really like the look of the structure, and I don't usually see these in the Nether, at least not when they're open. They're usually randomly buried and covered, so it was a very cool find. I hopped back onto Stanley with my pockets really full of goodies at this point and brought myself home. I had to go a long way, and this ocean below my base, it's pretty low, so it did take a little while to figure out how to get my way back up and in. To be honest, I got lost at one time, and even with coordinates I was using, it was just the Nether. The Nether can kind of be, well, if you've been there, you know. Henry is the piglin I have trapped at my Nether base. It's not really a base, my block of cobblestone where I come into the Nether, and Henry is who I give the gold to. And then Henry gives me something back, which I usually do in an automatic farm, and it's no big deal. The manual version, I sat here for over an hour just handing all of the gold over to Henry so Henry could hand me things back. It was very productive, don't get me wrong. It just took forever without an automatic farm to do it. I immediately took my hard-won resources and started working back on the base of the island. This is even only step 1 at this point, but you know, it's good to start somewhere. I'm just glad to be out of the Nether and to have safely gotten out of a bastion without dying for maybe the first time ever. So, high five to me. You guys keep asking me to do hardcore, and the answer has been no. But I'm feeling braver these days. You never know what might be around the corner. Maybe I'll pull the trigger in a sooner future than the never I had in mind. I am completely in love with how the transformation of the cliffside came out. It really has that pop of the different types of stone that kind of come together, but with a little bit of greenery and lush mixed in. It's just perfect. It's a perfect foundation for what I have in mind to come next. I started with a little bit of dirt just to put down a platform to move up so that it would be a little bit higher where the monument was, and I had more grass than anything else. What happened is that as I started putting the grass down, the dirt down, I just got further and further, and I started redefining my plan entirely. I'd been playing around with a couple different ideas for this island. One had a lot of rocks, there was no grass, very little greenery, and it was meant to be a little bit of an old monument that time had forgotten. My second idea for this island was to do a really rich, very green, overgrown type of a jungle feel, kind of like a jungle temple type of a monument for this island that better matched the green village on the other side. After debating between the two different ideas, I originally settled on the dead, dry, rock, lifeless island, but then as I was building it up, I changed my mind. I changed it entirely. I decided I wanted to go for more of that lush, definitely green type of a monument, but maybe with some of the rock ideas that I had in mind mixed in. It really changed a lot. This process here of just spreading dirt out everywhere, this is where the build changed in my mind. Now that I had a better idea of what I wanted for the build on this island, it was time to start collecting resources, and I needed more than a few of a lot of different things just to fulfill the image I had in my mind. I don't want to bore you with hours and hours of gathering like it took me. It was more like days and days. So instead, I'm just going to show you a few seconds of each of the things I had to put together before starting to build. As I was gathering supplies, I really needed string. I wanted a bunch of string so that I could block the way that bamboo and vines and other things were growing, and I already knew where a bunch of mine shafts were, so I went down deep. That way I could just get the cobwebs, use the sword, and take care of it really quickly. In theory, I ran into so many poison spiders, and I knew there was a spawner nearby and I was gonna find it and destroy it. That's I knew that part, but somehow I must have been in the vicinity long enough that the spiders went everywhere, and I had to take care of so many poison spiders, creepy ones, and I was just trying to get this string like absolutely no spider business whatsoever. I should tell you guys, I have downright arachnophobia. Seriously, and if you do too, I'm sorry that you're even watching this, because the poison spiders are my least favorite mob in the game, and I'm determined not to let them bother me. It's okay because they're huge. If they were really little, I wouldn't be able to play with them at all, but because they're big, somehow it's not quite so bad. One way or another, this was a nightmare, all the spiders. I'm really lucky that my armor is high enough that I survived. If this was earlier in the game, this would absolutely have taken me out. I certainly managed to get a lot of string, plenty for the project at hand, and also extra to trade with, so it worked out fine. While I was gathering resources down in the caves, I came upon the most epic cavern of lava I think I have ever seen in this game. Places like this in Minecraft just make me want to explore and see more of the world around me, and they're kind of inspiring, or at least they're awe-inspiring, especially places like this where there's just so much lava. This is my last episode in this world. We'll be starting a brand new project soon, just a little teaser for that, but this makes me want to think about doing some kind of a lava series in the future, just to find a cavern like this and make it home. Maybe far in the future, probably a nightmare, but it's cool looking, don't you think? I thought it was neat. With all the supplies in hand and ready to go, I really felt like we needed to trim up the armor before we could move forward and really build. I feel like I've explored a lot in my world, but I only had 2 armor trims, so I was able to put the wild armor trim both on my chest plate and on my legs, and I used the copper to trim it, and I really feel like that made them look awesome. This look actually was perfect for this tropical village that I've been building, and I'm really glad I decided to stop and do such a small thing before getting started on the big monument. Here is the state of things right before getting ready to build. You can see I have deep slate and tons of different variations of tuff down into the concrete that are kind of the darker tones. Into the lighter tones, I'm using a little bit of coral as well as stone, andesite, the concrete powder, and I've got a lot of extra stone because I'll probably need that too. I decided to add color, so I have a lot of mangrove wood. I have a lot of the pale oak wood as well, and different terracottas and lights, and just sort of a variety of things. This back chest here is the greenery, things that are mostly going to be used when I start landscaping the world around me. And in order to do the pathing, kind of the ground beneath my feet, that's actually in this extra chest because the moss is being used in so many ways. In the build, in the ground, in the landscaping, on the cliffside, just a ton of moss throughout the island. The last chest is just extra tools and supplies, and I feel like I've got a good variety of things now to go over and take a look at the build, at least the foundation that I want to start with. I know I want the structure to be big and tall and really kind of bulky and insinuate a lot of strength into it. So I've got a pretty big footprint for the main tower. At this point in the build, all I have are the base for where the edges, just the pillars on the sides are gonna go, but I definitely have a lot that I'm putting in the middle, and I knew I wanted color, so that part was already put together to just go ahead and match the vibe of what's going on in the village across. I'd already decided that I was going to use the deep slate and the darker blocks to kind of be the stone that was building up. I really wanted a lot of really cool textures and colors to just add some interesting things in the build. So I started off with this kind of a panel that's inset into the wall that has these really cool X shapes, and it has the orange terracotta behind it, which brought in a little bit of color without being too much color. I'd already decided that I was going to do each side of the monument with 3 panels, so I decided to duplicate the orange X's going up the other side and to do something different in the middle and incorporate a little bit of the burgundy reds as well. This is actually the 3rd try for the middle panel. I had done a couple of designs and taken them down. I didn't like them, so I actually switched over to just a really basic creative world so I could put together this center panel and line up and work the way that I wanted it to. Sometimes it's good to get into creative and just kind of figure things out where you can step back and look at the whole picture very easily. I decided to go ahead and do a little bit of glass in the middle so I could put shroom lights behind it and just kind of help light up the area as well as the structure. For the columns on the side, I decided to stick with the same dark deep stone gradient working into the tough blocks and added in a little bit of red terracotta to give it some color. After stepping back, I realized that the columns really needed a bit of depth. They just needed some texture to them, so I cut out a couple blocks in the middle between the red terracotta and just used stairs to give it a little bit of a curve, and then the main grove trap door on top of the red terracotta. Again, just elements to give it a little bit of depth and texture so it wasn't quite so plain. I have a couple tricky adventures that I'm going to have to figure out for some of the final details of this build, but for now, I decided it was just good to move forward. All I needed to do was finish duplicating this design on the other 4 sides and then building the tower up, which is what I'm going to show you now. My monument was complete and I love the way it came out, but I had a problem. I ended up using so much more copper than I originally intended to, and I don't want just regular copper, and I don't want it to be all the way oxidized to the teal color. All the copper that I want for the build is in the in-between, where it's kind of rusted in the middle. The only way to get it to stay, right, is to use honeycomb. The only way to get honeycomb is to find bees, and I didn't have any bees. I needed to take a journey, a long journey, because there is so much jungle in my world. I needed just to find a regular biome in order to find the bees. When I did get to just a regular forest with birch and oak trees, there were no bees. And I mean, there weren't a lot of flowers in the area I was in either, so that was probably why. But still, no bees in sight whatsoever. My journey continued for hundreds of blocks further. I hadn't gone a long way in this direction on the map, but I already knew the other way was mostly badlands and desert. So it was definitely the right direction to go. I just couldn't find any bees. I did find this really amazing mountain that was just covered in ore. Lots of iron ore and coal, but most importantly, quite a few emeralds, which is just such a unique and pretty block. And I just started mining up the things that I needed. I figured it was raining anyhow, and I was not likely to find any bees because they don't come out of their hives when it's raining. So I made progress on other things. Eventually it stopped raining and the sun came out, and I found a new forest with a beautiful little bee buzzing around, and so I started following the bee to try and get to his hive, and I, followed him. I think I followed the bee for 10 minutes and the bee never went home. What you have to understand is that going out to find a beehive was a task that I really thought was going to be very fast. I mean, I set out on the journey and I certainly was prepared with the things that I need, but I didn't think it was going to take an hour to finally get to the first beehive. I just wasn't sure that there were any bees in it, so I sort of sat and watched the beehive, and then eventually I decided maybe I would make a little bit more space for the bees to go in and out, and started kind of taking the leaves out from around the hive. I don't even know if that worked or not, but I was just waiting, right? If nothing else, the bees would come back at night, and then I could take them with me. But eventually I heard this little pop sound, and when that happens, that means that the bee went in, and then I watched another one pop right in. So it was at least two. I did the thing and I got the accomplishment, which meant there was at least 3 bees in the hive. I had managed my goal after all. And then I went to a forest that was nearby and ended up finding another one. So all was well in the bee department. If only I wasn't 1,500 blocks away from spawn. So of course I turned around and started walking all the way back home with my bees, thinking about where I was going to put them and what I was going to do to get the honeycomb production going. It was on my way home that I found the coolest thing, another friendly mountain with all the beautiful calcite. I just started digging up as much calcite as my pockets would hold because it's kind of a difficult block to find and it's really beautiful and I love it in so many builds. I didn't actually end up using maybe even a fourth of what I dug up, but I was so excited to find it. I just dug and dug for the longest time, literally until my pockets were bursting with calcite. I picked up a ton of hay bales from a couple villages that I passed while I was out looking for the bees. This is a treasure when you get to one of the villages because this is wheat and the wheat is trades. And trades, of course, gives me emeralds. The emeralds gives me trades for other things that I need, so I took every single hay bale that I could find. I originally thought that I would leave the monument completely empty, as if it was literally full of stone and had been carved as this beautiful remembrance of a hero from the past. But I did need a place for the bees, so I decided to hide an entrance on the side and kind of cover it up with bushes and things so that nobody would know it was there, so I could sneak in and create an entire haven for the bees inside of the monument. It was about this time in my life that I came down with the flu. Again, for the 3rd time during this cold and flu season. When I tell you that I have an immunocompromised system, that's no joke. I think I get sick practically every time that I leave the house. There's a reason that most of my hobbies involve video games, because they're safely at home and away from everybody else's germs. The point is, this was just meant to be a place where I was going to put the bees and get the honeycomb, but I just got a little carried away with myself. I was very heavily drugged with cold medication and just having one of those evenings where I wanted to do something for me for fun and just sit in the game and chill. And that's exactly what I did. I brought over a ton of flowers, lots of moss and different kinds of things, and created a perfect little environment for these bees to be happy. And you know what? That's the way it should be anyhow, instead of just plopping them in here to do their thing. It's good that they have a beautiful place to live and enjoy the flowers, and even if it happened because I got sick again. Are any of you guys like me? Do you get sick a lot, or are you super healthy where you can just withstand anything? Well, either way, I had a fun time putting all of the apiary together, and it worked out in my favor. I had all the honeycomb I needed. You can see already some of that copper changing over. I was able to get plenty of honeycomb, more than I'd ever need actually. I got a little carried away with myself, but I was able to honeycomb everything that I needed, and with it all waxed so that it would stay the right color, this particular monument was one more step closer to being finished. The last step, the very last thing to finish the tower is to get quite a few mob heads. Mob heads that would go on top. And I just wasn't quite ready for that journey yet. So I went down below and continued working on the island. I decided to go ahead and finish sort of everything else before doing my final adventures for the hero, and came down to add in all kinds of lush textures and different types of moss and flowers. Well, I mean, I took out some of the regular flowers, but we add in a lot of the torch flowers, bushes and trees and different types of things just to give the entire landscape a lot of beautiful overgrown texture. The entire island was completely spawn-proof, so I definitely had my guard down while I was landscaping everything and got attacked by one of the tiniest, most horrible creature in the game, the baby drowned. The baby drowned is my nemesis. And then all of a sudden, the baby drowned transformed into a little running drowned monster with the drowned on top of. I have no idea what happened here, you guys. I don't know if this was the game glitching or something that got added I didn't know about or one of the mods, but it was terrifying. Next up was to pull some of that beautiful, lush, overgrown feel up onto the walls. I was able to do that with glow lichen and all of the beautiful vines. The vines, of course, grow everywhere if they're not controlled. So I kind of surrounded it with all of the glow lichen, but there are a couple ways to do that in other places in the build. Instead of surrounding it with glow lichen, I would kind of box the ivy in by using the string that I got from battling all of those spiders. I was also able to put a bunch of hanging moss up, and I love that addition to the game that came with the Pale Gardens. Such a beautiful thing just to add in that overgrown feel, which was perfect for the island and the look I was going for. I wanted the island to have color, but not too much color. So I used a bunch of the Lily of the Valley, which have a little bit of that green in there, but of course the flower itself is white, which works really well. And then I did add a bunch of the torch flowers from the snippers. I really love this flower. It has that very wild appeal to it, and it helped to kind of coordinate and match with the other island. Other than that, I didn't add any other flowers in, so I sort of controlled where the flowers went in little patches as if they were growing together. I also added in a bunch of the large drip leaf. They're beautiful. It's kind of like this bushy looking feel to them. I was completely out of the small drip leaf, unfortunately, but I was able to bone meal the large ones, of course, to get more. Next up was the bamboo. I wanted a lot of bamboo in some places and none in others. Like there were these little patches of bamboo that were growing on the island. I also didn't want them to get too big, at least not everywhere. So I sat around for a long time and watched the bamboo. And when they got to the height that I was looking for, I'd come back in with string and stop the growth. This actually took quite a bit of patience, but it was worth it to make sure that the bamboo weren't covering up the monument behind them. I determined that the very center of the monument would have the dragon head, the Ender dragon head, which I obviously didn't have yet. But then around it would have mob heads from other different versions, the different triumphs of our hero, whose name is Tenagog, I decided. Tenagog was from an ancient people, and the people who are settled here in the village, they actually don't really know anything about this old people or very much about where they came from, but they know all about Tenagog and his great quest to defeat all of the creatures and keep the people safe. So they definitely honor him. And as I was trying to figure out who our hero had slain, I started with the heads that I already had. From the Nether, of course, I have the Hoglin and the Piglins and the Brutes, and I thought, maybe some of these could even be in themes, but at this point I was just mostly putting what I had out so I could see how they would go. And I really like the way that all of the heads look on top of the fences. They kind of look like a little toe head type thing on top. And I also realized at this point I was missing a lot of heads. I still had a ton of adventuring and mob hunting to do. Not to mention, I still needed to defeat the dragon and get a dragon head from one of the wow. At this point, I realized I thought my build was almost done. It, in fact, has a long way to go. I spent some time trading with villagers and healing up all of my tools. I needed my armor and my weapons at their best if we were going to go mob hunting. And once I had everything put together, food and tools, and was all ready, it was time for an adventure. That's right, I needed to go to the Nether, and there are multiple reasons for this. The first, of course, I still needed to find a fortress. I needed to find so I could get the blaze rod so that we could actually go to the dragon. I also, of course, went straight to the Nether so that I could find more mob heads. In fact, I was hoping I could do both things at once. Get a blaze head as well as the blaze rods and kind of get 2 stones with 1 hit. The big challenge that I faced at that particular moment in time is that I had spent a lot of time in the Nether already. I had spent hours just searching and moving about and looking for resources, and I hadn't come across a fortress yet. It might sound obvious, but I started out in the direction that I had gone out the furthest already before, and of course came into another lake of lava. In fact, it was probably a sea of lava, and if I think about it now, it was probably the same big sea of lava that had held me up in the past. I wandered carefully until I realized this was not the way to go. I was pretty high up over the lava, and trying to make progress meant just branching out everywhere, manually placing blocks. I needed to find another way down so I could travel more efficiently. I went all the way back to my portal and started finding little ways where I could go down more safe and more safely. To safely travel down. My plan was to go out a little bit further before kind of moving in a diagonal direction towards the area of the Nether that I hadn't seen very much of. Eventually, I got down far enough where I could dig through some netherrack to make progress. One block at a time and one step at a time, I carefully made my way down. Again, just trying to move through the world in a different direction in search of a fortress. I was really worried I was going to get lost or lose the progress that I made if I died. And I die in the Nether a lot. I have a long history of doing that. So I left a lot of paths and torches and different signs throughout as I was moving. That way, if I did die, I could find my way back really easily. The benefit is that if I didn't die, I would need to take the path to get back to my portal anyhow, so I was very careful and journeyed a little bit more slowly than probably is very interesting. The Nether certainly does a good job of making you cautious because random things will happen, like all of the gravel just falling through down into the lava because you walked nearby. You just can't be more careful when you're traveling around so much lava. Eventually, I made it to the lower part of the basalt delta, and I did a lot of just kind of digging through so I could see where I was at, but then also pillaring along, all the while moving in kind of a diagonal direction, which was the only direction I hadn't seen very much of. I'd already seen everything within about 1,000 blocks of my spawn, so I had to keep digging and branching and traveling out for several hundred blocks before I was seeing new things and could be confident of maybe finding something new. Eventually, I had traveled far enough out that I went ahead and changed directions and just started going in a straight line again. And mostly that's because it's a lot easier to travel in a straight line. It's less digging, it's a little bit safer. And I'm really glad I did, because after a little bit of straight line, I managed to open up right underneath a fortress. This might seem like good luck, but I've been traveling in the Nether for so long on this trip as well as previous trips. This was not luck. This was intense amounts of persistence and patience before finally finding what I was needing. Seriously. I dug my way up into the fortress, was able to get the achievement for a terrible fortress, and started looking about. I wasn't as nervous as I've been in the past when I've come to the Nether because I was pretty well geared up. My armor was in good shape at this point, and I was a lot less nervous than when I came and found the bastion on the first trip. I still moved along pretty cautiously because I was almost 1,800 blocks out from my spawn in the Nether. And if I did die, while I could make my way back, I'd created a path, that was going to take a long time. It would be a really long walk to get back to my stuff. I blocked off every single path so that none of the horrible, awful skeletons could come and poison me or get me. I wanted to be prepared. And it's also a little easier to hide from the blaze with that extra row. Well, most of the time. I knew it wasn't likely that I would find a wither skeleton skull that I could put on my beautiful monument, and I didn't. Throughout the entire fortress, I did take on all the wither skeletons that I could find, but didn't manage to find a single skull. But that's okay. I had other things that I found. I managed to take down a blaze and acquire the number one thing I most wanted, which was blaze rods. Of course, I needed a lot of them. I did not want to have to come so many blocks back all the way over just to get more blaze rods because I ran out. So I was pretty careful to try and make sure I went home with plenty. The second really important thing that I wanted to pick up was nether wart. I wanted plenty of nether wart, and I went ahead and got the sand while I was at it because it's just conveniently there to have what you need. And it's really useful for potions, right? And if there was any potions I wanted to make, I would need the nether wart. I also managed a lot of gold while I was here, which is good for trade. So fortresses, they have good loot. Eventually, I found the blaze spawner and was able to go in there with my sword and really stack up on those blaze rods. This is where I was making the most progress on the list, at least as far as the quantity. I managed 30 blaze rods and 2 blaze heads in all of the farming that I was doing at this spawner, and decided I would go ahead and call that good and started to find my way back home, which really wasn't too bad since I had taken the time to create a path. Even with that path, it took a long time, but it was nice and safe. I was down pretty close to the lava. Everything was really well lit up, so there weren't really any mob spawnings going on, and I was able to make it back to my nether spawn and safely get back home without even dying once in the nether. Not even once on the big full trip and into the nether fortress. I'm very proud of myself. High five. I spent a little while getting all of my inventory sorted, and I grabbed up a bunch of obsidian so I could use those blaze rods to make ender chests, which just always feels like a really good achievement. When I was in my specialty chest, I realized I actually had armor trims that I had forgotten about from all of the pirate ships or the sunken ships all around the world. So I went ahead and grabbed my armor, grabbed a little more copper, and decided to go ahead and trim off my other 2 pieces of armor since I could, and I thought it would be fun to just get fully decked out. And I love the little mod I have that makes my armor sparkle. It's just a simple thing, just having little bits of sparkles in the world, just bring it to life for me. I found a spare corner in my basement so I could grow up a bunch of the extra nether wart. I wasn't positive that I would even need it at that point, but I really like having resources down and growing and available to me if I ever do need them in the future. It just seems better than sitting in a chest somewhere. Next up was converting the blaze rods over to blaze powder. There's a couple reasons for doing this. Of course, you need it when you're brewing potions, but I mostly wanted to be able to make the Eye of Ender. The Eyes of Ender are necessary for going to the end, as most of you probably know. I wasn't quite ready for an end trip yet because I wanted the dragon head to be the very last one I added to the monument, but I went ahead and got the supplies ready because I knew it was going to be coming up soon. Up at the top of the monument, I completely finished another themed side by adding the blaze to the little lineup, and I realized that the piglin and the brute are not that different. Over on the other side, I didn't quite have a theme yet, and I still had room where I needed to get more heads. this was taking much more work than I thought. I went down the stairs below to my strip mining and into the little room where I have a poison spider spawner that I've kind of enclosed to make it a little bit easier to take care of the spiders. And I knew I had at least one in there. So I grabbed the cave spider head from that room. I also had a slime head that I'd had on display in my room in my starter house, so I brought it with me and kind of added the two as underground dungeon type of mobs. I'd been to a trial chamber quite a long time ago in my searching, and I wasn't quite sure, one, if I knew where it was still, and two, how long it was really going to take me to get there. So I decided to go ahead and buy a map from my cartographer to find the closest trial chamber. I love that the cartographer has maps for this now. I also picked up the Woodland mansion map, and I really felt very surprised. I mean, absolutely blown out of the water when I pulled up the map for the trial chamber, and it was practically off the edge of my island. I mean, it was right there at spawn. I took the map and I went running to go find it because I was pretty sure that this was leading me directly to the edge of my island, and I needed to see where it was pointing to. I could tell from the map, but I was so surprised that the trial chamber was really nearby and really excited because that meant I would be able to go down into the trial chamber, potentially get more heads, but also more resources. I mean, just look at this map. It's literally right there. It's just right off the coast. So I started gathering all the supplies that I would need, including the bad omen potions I had from different pillager raids that had come through, as well as just stocking up on food and resources to dig down what looked like was going to be digging down through the water a little bit to make a path down to the trial chamber that I just didn't see before. I've spent a lot of time underground already, so I was still a little skeptical. The map said there was a trial chamber practically below my feet. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure there was going to be one there because I had already spent so much time in that place, underground, in that space, and hadn't seen anything. To my most pleasant surprise, it took no time at all to find it. I've already been to a trial chamber in this particular series, so I think I'll just skip to the part that I thought was most fun, and that was down battling the breeze. These guys are such a fun mob, and I was able to battle them with the extra potion in me, right? So we were already working on more difficult mode because that way I could get keys and get into the better chests and maybe get some really cool loot that way. So I was doing the epic battle with the breeze, and you know what? They're actually pretty difficult. I had to cage them in and make a smaller space so that they wouldn't make me fly all over the room. But I love battling the breeze and I love the trial chambers, and this was really fun. I didn't manage to get a mace, so I don't have that as kind of a cool thing, but I don't know that that would have really worked on the monument, so it was fine. The coolest thing, of course, to happen is I came out with heads. So I had a breeze head, which I thought is just so cool. It's one of my favorite heads. I got a bogged head, and then there were also strays down there. And even though I already have my little slime head from a previous thing, there were slime spawners down in my trial chambers. So I put them together and they all became a little bit of a theme. The whole row are all the things from the trial chamber, which really worked since the other one is all the things from the Nether. So I was working on another theme and kind of putting the themes together to see what other row I might be able to finish. The Nether row is complete. The trial chamber row is complete. I just needed 2 more heads. Oh, and the dragon head, of course, but I already know where to go to find that one. After all the time I spent down in the trial chamber, I decided I wanted to actually finish the entire island before I finished the heads on the monument. I wanted to bring the rest of the heads home to a completed space, all right? So it was like this epic thing. So I had a lot of things I needed to put together, including a ton of gray things, pale oak wood and calcite andesite, stone, all the things that I wanted to make rocks on the island. After stripping down a bunch of the pale oak wood, I had everything I needed ready to go, and I started working on the layout for what I wanted to be kind of an interesting rock structure on the island. This might be a surprise, but building large rock structures is actually a lot like building really big roofs, that you want to go through and create a little bit of a surface. It's kind of like the face of the rock, and then you work out from there. I started this process just with stone because I have a lot of it, but I will come back and texture the entire thing. But what I'm doing right now, I started with the face, a little bit of a pyramid structure, and now I'm just going back and adding additional layers behind it that kind of go out and up a little bit further. But I don't want it to be perfect. I want the rock to kind of meander here and there, so you sort of go out and up a little further, but in a unique pattern, or in an unpredictable way, while still sort of following the original shape that you made. I also want the rock to really connect with the ground, so I go back in and add either a little bit of cobbled stone on the bottom or a little bit of dirt, different types of coarse dirt, things that just take that rock and make it look more like it's sitting directly upon the earth, not as if the rock had just been dropped and exists with absolutely no connection. So you can let a little bit of things like moss grow up the side of the rocks even. You let it kind of come out into the landscape. Once I got one side looking the way that I wanted it to, I kind of connected around to the other edge and repeated the same process, working on a little bit of a rock face and then going out a little further, little steps at a time. The next step comes from texturing the rock. The darker colors kind of clustered on the bottom, and then a little bit of medium colors working their way up until the rock goes all the way up. For me, on this island, I decided to let the rocks go all the way up to a white peak. It's actually something I really wanted on the island, and originally the plan was to make the entire island full of just rocks without the vegetation. But I ended up going ahead and making it the overgrown feel and sticking with this beautiful type of rock structure I really wanted to do that goes all the way up to white on the top. The last step is just to come back in with different slabs and just stairs or different types of blocks to make the outside a little bit less blocky, right? Just adding in different types of shapes in different places. I really love the way that the white adds just a bit of contrast to the top, and it's not something I always do. Sometimes you just stick with the stone. I just wanted these rocks to have a little bit more character. The very last step is to create a few just smaller stones, smaller rocks that are going to live at the base of these large rocks. I don't want it to just be big rocks, but to have a variety of different sizes. And then I came in with the different flowers and the bone meal and really did a lot to tie the two things in together. It's so much fun to landscape. It is definitely my favorite thing to do in Minecraft. I love landscaping. A skeleton fell down on my head while I was landscaping in the middle of the night, and I realized I needed to come up and add a little bit more. So I did a little bit of glow lichen to sort of light the top of the rocks up, as well a little bit of the pale moss. And I really like those details. I used two different kinds of trees over here on the stone island. The first one is just jungle trees, but I took the beautiful mangrove roots and kind of built them up at the base and let them grow outwards so that the jungle trees had a lot of kind of an interesting connection to the ground. And I really like the way that turned out. I also used mangrove leaves to kind of spread bushes and vines out all over the rocks as well as the ground, just to bring in a little bit more of that overgrown feel. Last up were a few more details with vines, just a little bit on the rocks here and there, as well as hanging moss coming down from the trees and a little bit of bamboo, but not too much, growing up here and there. And these three things really helped fill in that jungle vibe, but also the overgrown vibe. The hanging moss, just perfect for what I was trying to accomplish for the look over here. A place and a land that had been forgotten or unused, or the people know about it, but they don't use it. They don't go to it. So I had to spend a lot of time making a bunch of hanging moss just by bone mealing it and then growing it down from the trees. It doesn't seem to grow by itself. It looks like you have to bone meal it. Has anybody else figured out a way to make the moss grow? Does it have to be bone mealed every time you want to make more of it? Well, that's what I had to do anyhow, but it's not hard. The shears in one hand, bone meal in the other, and just back and forth until I had all the moss I needed for the island. After finishing one area, I stepped back just to sort of look around, take a look at it, and decide if that was what I was going for, and it was just perfect. So all I needed to do now was recreate and continue the style all over to cover the entire island. I still needed 2 more heads before I could do the dragon fight, and I had a map. I had a map to a woodland mansion. Now, there would be different people there, different mobs with different heads, and I decided to go ahead and start the journey. I went the direction of the map at least, and I had no idea how far I was gonna have to go. I will say this, if I had any idea before this journey how far and how long I was going to have to go before I found the Woodland Mansion, I would never have set out on the journey. And after going a couple thousand blocks, I thought, you know what, maybe I will just turn back. But the map was taking me to the place, so I just trusted it and kept journeying along forever in my world. It did allow me to pick up some good resources, though. I found several villages on the way and took all of the hay bales from that and anything else that was interesting in the villages. The coolest thing by far that I found in the entire journey was kind of a rare find. I was over in the desert, a different desert, wandering through, and I found one of the fossils. A bunch of bone blocks all around different coal blocks. It was out of the sand. It was poking out. I almost left it there because I just thought it was cool, but I needed the bone blocks and the resources, and I was never going to come back to this area in the world ever again. So I decided it would be okay to take it with me, but it was really neat to see. It's not the kind of thing I see in the world very often, and it's always fun when your Minecraft world surprises you a little bit. I also found this really crazy mountain structure in the desert as I was traveling. I was so surprised to see its shape, and it had kind of a mangrove stuff going on behind it from the desert. I thought, you know what? This could be its own world all by itself. Little village at the base. What would you guys do with this weird rock structure? I think it has potential to be something cool. I eventually got to another ocean area, which is good because you can travel a lot faster in a boat. And I was stopping at sunken ships and other things as I found it. But eventually I decided I was going to have to stop and just move forward without stopping at all the things that I saw, because I still wasn't on the map of this woodland mansion, and I would have stuff from the mansion in my pockets too. I didn't want to fill up my inventory before I got there, so I stopping at interesting things and just pressed forward, trying to find my way on the map. I say that, but I still stopped to get a couple full stacks of orange tulips because I really like them. The orange, right? It's a really unique tropical color. I wanted more on the island. It was the first flower forest I had really seen. Eventually, my little dot worked its way onto the map and the mansion came into view. It was only 3,700 blocks away from spawn. I can't believe it's the closest mansion that this map was bringing me to, but We finally made it there, and I stopped to get a bed out and set my spawn and put supplies down and make a little camp on the beach before heading in. I brought some invisibility potions with me, so when I got to the front door of the mansion, I took the invisibility potion and I took most of my armor off, and I had my sword and I was ready to go and pop in so that the mobs wouldn't see me. I thought that would work really well, and it worked. I was walking right up to the creepers. They weren't tracking me at all. I thought this was going to be the easiest mansion ever. I could just walk through, find the treasure, find the mobs I was looking for so I could get the heads that I needed. Remember, the whole point was to get a couple of heads from the mansion while I was here because there were different kinds of mobs. And all of a sudden I came around the corner to a couple of bad guys. I'm still invisible. Maybe I got too close. I don't know, but the Vindicator hit me without the armor on. I was out in one shot. It's a good thing I set my spawn. And I thought, you know what? If the Vindicators can still see me when I'm invisible, either it's a glitch or I did something wrong and I'm done with going in without my armor on. I put it all back on and stocked back up for a whole entire real life trip into the mansion instead of what I thought was going to be a nice slip in, easy, invisible trip into the mansion. Woodland mansions are rough. They are full of mobs and baby zombies in the middle of the mansion. It seems like cheating to me, like they shouldn't be allowed. But I blocked off as many of the rooms as I could as I was going so nothing could jump out and surprise me. And that really is probably the best way to go into a mansion anyhow. At least it's the typical way instead of my invisible way. But it allows you to kind of clear one room at a time. And like I said, make sure nothing jumps out and surprises you. Vindicators hit hard, I tell ya. So you still have to be really careful with whatever is going on in the hallway. And I needed the head, so it's not like I could avoid all the mobs entirely. I just didn't want to take all of them on at once. I just wanted to do them one at a time. My plan worked out pretty well in the beginning. I was able to take care of them easily without too many problems and even got a Vindicator head pretty early on in this process, which was cool. Of course, that was the reason, right? I was coming to get some of the different heads. So with a Vindicator head in my pocket, all I needed was one more unique head. And that was going to put me at odds with a very different kind of mob. I was both avoiding and searching out for evokers that could maybe give me a head by themselves, or they spawn Vex, and I knew that I could probably get a Vex head. Of course, that meant taking the Vex on, and I was going through fine. What I didn't know is that I was getting ready for the single most dangerous and intense Minecraft battle of my life. And I'm not exaggerating. I found an evoker in one of the rooms, so I ran in as fast as I could to take it on and try and take it out before the evoker could make any Vex. But of course the Vex started coming anyhow. And what I didn't realize is that there was another evoker that had somehow jumped onto the top of the thing and had escaped me. I couldn't even see it at all. And I was taking on the Vex and I was doing okay. My health was stable. It was fine. It was fine until it wasn't. I thought I had taken the evoker out, but the Vex kind of kept coming. And I thought, you know what? There's going to be a few Vex around. It's no big deal. We'll take them out and I'll be fine. So I had my shield up and I was dealing with the Vex. They get these really mad, angry faces on, and then they start charging you, and then they flip around through the walls and come at your back. These things are terrifying. But I was mastering my Vex battle technique, and I was determined to take them on instead of just running and hiding someplace in the distance, which is what I would have done before with the Vex. But I wanted the evokers. I wanted a Vex head or the invoker head. I needed them to finish the mansion, the monument that I'm working on. I needed to finish the mansion too, but to finish the monument that I was doing. And I also really just wanted to practice these things because they're so hard. Instead of running, face your fear type of thing. And then I realized that there was another evoker. So I took the other evoker out and thought, oh, that's why I was having problems. But the Vex never stopped. The attacks never stopped. The Vex never stopped. Even with the Evoker dead, it's because I still had one in there and I didn't know it was alive. I start running at this point because I also don't want to die. And the most dramatic moment with me fighting all these Vex, a lot of Vex all at once, and there's a thunderstorm outside. It's literally lightning and thunder. So I couldn't run even if I wanted to because I can't get all the way out to my bed on the beach to try and sleep the night away or to escape the Vex because the Vex are just gonna follow me and there's gonna be more bombs outside. So I had no choice but to make a stand. I was so focused. I wasn't watching anything. I wasn't listening to anything. I was 100% focused on the Vex that kept coming, no matter how many of them I took out. It just kept coming. I thought I had taken care of the Evokers, but I hadn't. So it was a constant supply of Vex over and over, round after round of Vex. And I couldn't get away from them, and I couldn't even get back to try and see if I could get another Evoker. Obviously, I figured out there had to be another Evoker because the Vex wouldn't stop. I was so stressed. So I went running back to see if I could find another Evoker. And I could see the spells. There was definitely another one. So I start trying into the room to see if I can take it out. And I can't find the Evoker anywhere. I'm going room by room and space by space, all the while taking on an endless supply of Vex so I can try and find the other Evoker. I should have cut my losses and left, but I just really wanted to tackle this challenge. Oh, wow. I just can't even begin to tell you how crazy this battle was for me. Like I said, the most epic battle I've had in Minecraft in my entire life. The Vex battle continued throughout the entire night and the entire thunderstorm, but eventually I could see that there was a little bit of light in the distance that I could probably get out and find my bed and at least recover and try and come back and find the Evoker again. I must have exited the mansion on the wrong side because then I lost my beach. So I'm literally circling the mansion and the Vex are still following me. They are still attacking me as I'm running outside trying to find my bed. And I don't know why I think my bed is going to fix anything. I'm just trying to get far enough away that I can recover and breathe for a minute. And I knew I was going to head back in at some point because I still had an Evoker to find. And now, the Evoker and I, we had a score to settle. My life would not stop until after I found him. Was this a good idea? Probably not. Was I a little bit obsessed? Well, maybe, but the Evoker, it was the Evoker. He had to be found. The good news is that a previous Evoker had dropped a totem, so I at least had that in my offhand as I went searching for my nemesis. Literally, room by room in the entire mansion, looking for the long-lost Evoker. After longer than I care to admit, I saw the spell, the Evoker spell, coming out from one of the rooms. And so I knew I had found it, which was great. And I was able to go in, at least knowing what I was going into. But wow, these guys are hard. I was now the proud owner of multiple Vindicator and Vex heads, having achieved what felt like the biggest victory of my entire Minecraft career. I had everything I needed to pop home and put these heads in their proper place. The neatest part is that once I got close to home, I could see my island. I could see the monument and the trees and the jungle and everything in the distance. And this was so satisfying. It was really amazing to see the creation just kind of come up on the horizon as I was returning home. It felt so good. I dropped all my stuff off at my starter home first because I like staying organized, and then I was able to come over and walk through the newly landscaped island and climb up to the very top so I could place 2 heads that really did feel like I had achieved something special. I played around with the heads a little bit, and then I realized I actually had a cool theme on this other stretch with the pillager head, the vindicator head, the zombie villager, and then of course the drowned. It was all different variations of the little villager zombie form. It was like different types of people on the Minecraft world. So I thought that ended up being a really cool theme. It was like I had battled the inhabitants to be able to get this side done. And then it worked out for the other one where we had a couple of crawling monsters and a couple of flying monsters. That way they go with the trial chamber set and another set, and the sides of the monument were done. We just have one more to go before finishing off the monument. I have fought the Ender Dragon several times in my Minecraft time, and it's always the same. Use Ender Pearls, find your way to the stronghold, finish the portal, and transport to the end where you take on the dragon. After defeating the dragon, I was so lucky. I found what I was looking for in the end right away. All I had to do was pillar over because there was a ship and an Ender City right within view. I was able to take that dragon head from the front of the boat. I wish the dragon head came from defeating the dragon, but it doesn't. And I stopped and picked up a couple of elytra while I was there. Then I found a portal so I could pop back home and go through back to the stronghold. I immediately put everything I needed, enchantments and stuff, on my elytra and flew back home. Rockets were easy. I'd taken out a ton of creepers while I was preparing, and as soon as the islands were in view, it was even better than I was taking the boat back from the mansion, returning home to see these 2 islands. I love the way that they're similar but different. They have so much character. I really enjoy the terraforming around the edge. I couldn't be happier. I took the egg from the dragon and I put it on a little shelf back in my starter home at my base right above my bed. I thought it looked really cool there in front of the window, and then flew over to the monument because, as you know, we just have the one last head to place. So I had this podium all set up so that I could place the dragon head on top of it right in the middle. Actually, I think it looked kind of silly, like the fence was the neck, but I don't care. I'm leaving it that way. This was my momentous monument of achievement, and it might have been in lore for some ancient hero, but in the end, I'm the one who did all of the things. So it really should be a monument to me. That doesn't sound self-centered at all. If that doesn't sound self-centered to you, please like and subscribe and all those YouTube things. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I wish you all the best. Minecraft Day.